Absalom had everything: a throne within reach, the love of the people, and the blood of a king. But he died hanging helplessly from a tree after trying to take his father's kingdom. This is the story of the most dangerous rebellion in King David's life. A prince admired throughout Israel slowly transformed into a rival king, stole the hearts of the people, and launched a civil war against his own father. But the deeper story isn't about politics or power. It's about a wound that was never healed. Most people remember how Absalom died. Far fewer understand why he rebelled in the first place. And hidden inside his rise and fall is a warning about bitterness, revenge, and ambition that still destroys lives today. Before Absalom became King David's greatest enemy, he looked like the future of Israel itself. Most tragedies don't begin with obvious evil. They begin with a wound, a disappointment, a wrong that never gets made right. That was the story of Absalom. Long before he became a rebel, he was a prince, the son of King David during the golden age of Israel. The kingdom was strong. Enemies had been defeated. Jerusalem had become the center of power. And among David's many sons, Absalom stood out. The Bible describes him in extraordinary terms. No man in Israel was more praised for his appearance. People noticed him immediately. He was handsome, confident, charismatic, the kind of person who naturally attracted attention. He even became famous for his hair, which the Bible describes in unusual detail. To modern readers, that may seem strange, but in the ancient world, appearance mattered, especially for future kings. Absalom looked like a leader. He had royal blood, influence, opportunity. Everything seemed to point toward a bright future. If someone had asked who might someday shape the future of Israel, many people would have pointed directly at him. But while the nation admired the prince, a crisis was quietly growing inside David's own family. A crisis that would eventually divide a kingdom, destroy relationships, and transform a beloved son into his father's greatest threat. The event that changed Absalom's life forever didn't happen on a battlefield. It happened inside his own home. The rebellion that nearly destroyed David's kingdom began with a crime David failed to stop. Among David's children was a daughter named Tamar. She was Absalom's sister. The Bible presents her as a woman of beauty and character. Absalom cared deeply for her. But another member of the royal family had become obsessed with her. His name was Amnon, David's oldest son, the heir to the throne. Instead of controlling his desires, Amnon fed them. Eventually, he developed a plan. Pretending to be sick, he convinced David to send Tamar to care for him. Everything appeared innocent. No one suspected what was about to happen. Once they were alone, Tamar immediately sensed danger. She pleaded with him, reasoned with him, warned him about the consequences. But Amnon ignored every warning. What followed became one of the darkest moments in David's family. And then something shocking happened. The obsession that had consumed Amnon vanished. The Bible says his desire turned into hatred. The same woman he claimed to want was now treated like an enemy. He rejected her, humiliated her, and sent her away. Tamar left devastated, her future shattered. Eventually, she came to Absalom. The moment he saw his sister, he understood what had happened. The pain became personal. The wound became his own. From that moment forward, something began growing inside him. Something that would shape every major decision he made for the rest of his life. But the event that truly transformed Absalom wasn't what Amnon did. It was what David failed to do afterward. Sometimes the deepest wounds are not caused by evil actions. Sometimes they are caused by justice that never comes. When David learned what Amnon had done, he was furious. The Bible makes that clear. He was angry, outraged, deeply disturbed. But anger and action are not the same thing, and David took no meaningful action. No punishment came, no public judgment followed, no consequences arrived. The king who settled disputes throughout Israel failed to settle the crisis inside his own family. For Tamar, the pain remained. For Absalom, the frustration grew. Imagine watching the man responsible continue living as if nothing happened, attending royal events, enjoying the privileges of being heir to the throne. Day after day, month after month, nothing changed. For Absalom, every passing day reinforced the same message. No one was coming to make this right. No one was going to defend Tamar. No one was going to hold Amnon accountable. At first, Absalom appeared calm. He said very little. He made no threats. He showed no anger publicly. But beneath the surface, bitterness was growing, like a fire hidden beneath the floorboards. For 2 years he waited, every day giving David another chance to act, every day ending in silence. Eventually, something changed inside him. He stopped expecting justice. And when people lose faith in justice, they often decide to create their own. For a time, Absalom said almost nothing, but silence doesn't always mean peace. Sometimes, silence means revenge is waiting. For 2 years, Absalom waited. Then one invitation changed the future of Israel. Absalom organized a celebration during sheep shearing season. In the ancient world, this was often a time of feasting and family gatherings. He invited members of the royal household, including Amnon, exactly as he intended. The celebration began normally. Food was served, conversations filled the air. Nothing seemed unusual. But Absalom had spent 2 years preparing for this moment. His servants already knew what to do. Then the signal came. Without warning, they attacked. Amnon was killed. The heir to Israel's throne was gone. For a brief moment, Absalom may have believed justice had finally been served. The man who hurt Tamar had paid for his crime. The wrong had been answered. The wound had been addressed. But revenge rarely brings the peace people expect. Instead of healing the wound, it created new ones. Panic spread through the kingdom. Rumors exploded. David received devastating news. Another son was dead, and the son responsible was Absalom. The prince who once seemed destined for greatness had become a murderer. Everything changed in a single afternoon. Absalom thought he was delivering justice. Instead, he had started a chain of events that would eventually threaten the entire kingdom. And now he had only one choice left: run. The years that followed changed Absalom, but not in the way anyone hoped. After killing Amnon, Absalom fled. He left Jerusalem, left his family, left everything he had ever known. For 3 years he lived in exile. At first, he may have believed he had done the right thing. After all, David had failed to act. Someone had to defend Tamar. Someone had to bring justice. Perhaps Absalom convinced himself that he had become that person. But exile has a way of changing people, and time has a way of deepening old wounds. Meanwhile, David mourned. Despite everything that had happened, he still loved his son. Eventually, David's commander, Joab, persuaded the king to allow Absalom to return. At first, this seemed like good news. The family could finally heal. But healing never came. David allowed Absalom back into Jerusalem, yet refused to see him. Think about that. Absalom was home, but not really home. 2 more years passed. 2 years in the same city. 2 years without reconciliation. 2 years without addressing the past. The relationship remained frozen. Neither side dealt with the deeper wounds. And buried problems rarely stay buried forever. Eventually, David agreed to receive his son. Outwardly, everything appeared restored, but appearances can be deceiving. Years of bitterness had changed Absalom. Years of rejection had changed him. Years of unresolved pain had changed him. And now, a new idea was beginning to take root, a dangerous one. At some point, Absalom stopped seeing himself as the wounded son. He started seeing himself as the man who deserved the throne. Most men try to take power with armies. Absalom decided to take something even more valuable first: the hearts of the people. Absalom understood something many leaders never learn. People rarely follow someone simply because they have authority. They follow people who make them feel understood. And Absalom was exceptionally skilled at that. He knew how to attract attention. He knew how to look like a king before he ever became one. He acquired chariots, horses, 50 men to run ahead of him. Every appearance communicated power. But appearances alone weren't enough. Absalom needed support, real support. So he positioned himself at the city gate. In ancient Israel, the gate was more than an entrance. It was where legal disputes were discussed, where people came seeking justice. Day after day, Absalom met them there. He listened to their problems. He sympathized with their frustrations. And then he planted a dangerous idea. If only I were judge in the land. Notice what made this strategy so effective. He never attacked David directly. Instead, he presented himself as the solution, the prince who cared, the prince who listened, the prince who understood. People left those conversations feeling respected, and every conversation increased his influence. The Bible summarizes his success with a chilling statement. Absalom stole the hearts of the men of Israel, slowly, patiently, one conversation at a time, until the fugitive prince became one of the most popular men in the nation. And once people begin treating you like a king, it becomes very tempting to believe you should be one. Soon, Absalom would stop working in the shadows. He would make his move openly, and even King David would be forced to run. The rebellion had been growing for years. Now it was finally ready to reveal itself. Absalom traveled to Hebron, claiming he was going to fulfill a vow. It sounded innocent, even spiritual. But behind the scenes, a rebellion was already in motion. Messengers moved throughout Israel. Supporters were organized. Plans were finalized. Then came the signal. Trumpets sounded, and a shocking announcement spread across the land. Absalom is king in Hebron. Just like that, the rebellion became public. Support poured in from every direction. Even some of David's trusted advisors switched sides. Among them was Ahithophel, one of the most respected counselors in Israel. His support made the rebellion far more dangerous. When news reached Jerusalem, David immediately understood the threat. This wasn't a small uprising. It was a genuine attempt to take the kingdom. If he stayed, Jerusalem could become a battlefield. Thousands might die. So David made a heartbreaking decision. He left. The king who defeated Goliath, the king who united Israel, the king who built a kingdom, walked away from his own capital. The Bible paints a painful picture. David left barefoot, his head covered, weeping as he climbed the Mount of Olives. Those around him wept as well. It felt less like a retreat and more like a funeral. Meanwhile, Absalom entered Jerusalem in triumph. The city was his. The throne seemed within reach. Victory finally appeared real. But taking a throne is much easier than keeping one. And the decision that would determine the entire war was about to be made. The future of Israel came down to two pieces of advice. One would have won the war, the other would destroy the rebellion. As Absalom settled into Jerusalem, his advisors gathered around him. Everyone understood the situation. David was vulnerable. His forces were scattered. His supporters were shaken. If there was ever a time to strike, it was now. Ahithophel saw that immediately. His advice was simple: attack now. Move quickly. Don't give David time to recover. Military historians still recognize it as an excellent strategy. Had Absalom followed it, the rebellion might have succeeded. But another voice spoke up. A man named Hushai. Unknown to Absalom, Hushai remained loyal to David. Instead of appealing to military wisdom, he appealed to something else: Absalom's pride. He painted a grand picture. Gather all Israel. Build a massive army. Lead them personally. Win a glorious victory everyone would remember forever. It sounded magnificent. and it happened to be exactly what Absalom wanted to hear. That is one of pride's greatest dangers. It rarely chooses the best advice. It chooses the most flattering advice. And that is exactly what happened. Absalom rejected Ahithophel. He chose Hushai. The moment he made that decision, the rebellion began to die. Because every day of delay helped David. Every day gave him more time, more soldiers, more preparation. By the time Absalom realized his mistake, the armies were already marching toward a battlefield. And waiting there was an ending nobody expected. The man who spent years lifting himself toward the throne was about to be brought down in a single moment. The armies met in the forest of Ephraim. The battle was fierce. Chaos spread through the trees. Men became separated. Units lost contact. The terrain itself became dangerous. As fighting intensified, David's experienced soldiers gained the advantage. Absalom's forces began collapsing. The dream was dying. The kingdom was slipping away. Soon, Absalom found himself fleeing. Then came one of the most unforgettable moments in the Bible. As he rode beneath a large tree, something happened. His head became caught in the branches. Whether it was his famous hair, his clothing, or something else, the result was the same. His mule continued running. Absalom did not. Suddenly, he hung helplessly in the air. The image is powerful. For years, he pursued power. For years, he chased a throne. For years, he elevated himself. Now he hung between heaven and earth with no power at all. A soldier found him and reported it to Joab. David had given strict instructions. Protect Absalom. Spare him. Treat him gently. But Joab saw things differently. As long as Absalom lived, the rebellion remained a threat. So Joab ignored the king's command. Moments later, Absalom was dead. The rebellion was over. The kingdom was saved. But the most heartbreaking moment of the story wasn't Absalom's death. It was David's response when he heard the news. David wasn't waiting to hear who won the battle. He only wanted the answer to one question. As messengers raced back from the battlefield, David waited anxiously. Victory meant nothing to him. Military success meant nothing to him. Only one thing mattered: Absalom. Again and again, he asked the same question. Is the young man Absalom safe? Think about that. This was the son who betrayed him, the son who stole the hearts of Israel, the son who drove him from Jerusalem, the son who tried to take his throne, yet David still loved him. Finally, the truth emerged. Absalom was dead. In that moment, everything else disappeared. The victory, the kingdom, the political crisis, none of it mattered. A father had lost his son. David withdrew to the room above the gate. Then came one of the most emotional cries in all of Scripture. "Oh, my son Absalom, my son Absalom! Would I had died instead of you, O Absalom, my son, my son!" Notice what David does not do. He does not celebrate. He does not rejoice. He does not thank his soldiers. Instead, he mourns. Because beneath all the politics was a family tragedy, a wounded sister, a silent father, a bitter brother, a murdered heir, a divided kingdom, a civil war. And at the center of it all stood years of pain that were never healed. Absalom's story is not ultimately about politics. It is about what happens when bitterness is allowed to grow unchecked. What begins as a wound can become resentment. Resentment can become hatred. Hatred can become destruction. The tragedy of Absalom is not that he died hanging from a tree. The tragedy is that the prince who once looked destined to inherit a kingdom spent years chasing justice, then revenge, then power, and lost himself somewhere along the way. And in the end, the man who tried to take his father's crown discovered something too late. The kingdom was never the thing he truly needed.